Hello, my name is Jamie and welcome to this tutorial. Today we're going to take a look at some modelling. We'll model some leather wrappings like you might see around the handle of a sword. You could use this technique to model something like bandages as well, or just basically anything flat that you might wrap around something else. You can work the details into it sort of after you've done all this. So first thing we need is an object to wrap around. So I'm just going to grab this and move it up. It's easier at this point to just have a tall object rather than a long object. So have it standing up like this, just above the origin, as opposed to sort of lying down like that. It just makes it a bit easier when it comes to generating some curves and stuff. I suppose I'd recommend that you duplicate and separate a section of the mesh that you want to actually wrap around. So if you want to wrap some leather straps around an arm or some bandages around a leg or something like that, what you can do, I'll just demonstrate here. So select the portion of the mesh that you want to duplicate and wrap around. So I'll just do Shift D to duplicate that, and then right click, and with it still selected, I'll get P and separate by selection. So this object here is an exact duplicate of this section of the object. So I can move this around and do my stuff around it and then move everything back into place. So I'll just get rid of that. And then I'm going to do a Control 2 to turn it into a subdivided mesh, and I'm just going to reinforce the ends so that it's basically just a cylinder. And go into object mode and apply that. I'll set the shading to smooth just so it's nice to look at. Now, sort of the big trick in this is the curves. So normally when you go in to add a curve, you've only got these options, and none of them are really any good, because what we want is a spiral that we can wrap around the object itself. And the easiest way to do that is to actually, it sort of comes with Blender, but you have to enable it. So we'll go into User Preferences, and we'll go to Add Curve, and then Extra Objects. So now when we go Shift A to curve, you see extra objects here, and you want curves galore, and this is going to give you this weird shape down here, but we don't need to worry about that quite yet. We can change the type here in the T panel to Helix 3D. You can just hit T to enable that panel, or if you can hit that little plus button there to bring that up. So now we've got a curve. I'll just go into wireframe mode quickly so we can see what's going on, and I'll go into front as well. So I'll just go over the few settings that we're going to need. I'm going to bring the height up so it's sort of just past, because I want the curve to go sort of just past either end, so I can adjust the actual where the actual curve lays on the object if I want to. So that's in at 7. I'll adjust the width so that it's, further. I want it to be sort of off the actual object. Don't worry about setting it just on your object, because you might have an object that tapers or has different shapes along it. So the method that I've sort of come up with allows for that. And then you could just adjust the end angle, and this is going to basically cause the spiral to increase in resolution. Now you may notice that it's sort of gone a bit blocky around the curve. You can just turn the resolution up a bit. You do want a good amount of resolution for this, but don't put too much. So you want it to be sort of fairly smooth. But if you add too much, then you're just going to have some unwieldy objects. So we've got a curve generated, and it's sort of wrapping around our object a bunch of times. So what we want to do now is convert that object into a mesh. So I'm going to go Alt-C with the object selected, and go Mesh from Curve. And then, so if we tab into Edit Mode, you can see it's all just vertices now. So I'm going to want to add in a Shrinkwrap Modifier, and I'm going to shrink wrap the spiral to the actual object itself. So I can go cube. And now you see it's a bit wonky and it's not perfect at the moment. We can just fix that up. So first thing we want to do is select everything and hit S and then Shift Z, and that'll bring everything in a bit closer. And the closer it is to the mesh, the better it's going to look. As you can see, it's sort of looking pretty good now that it's quite close in. If I was to hit S, Shift Z and bring things up, you'll see how everything sort of starts to get wonky and looks a bit weird. So yeah, bring it in close so that you've got a nice... so the shrink wrap doesn't have to think too hard, basically. It doesn't have to shoot out from too many different angles to figure out where the vertices should go. So if I turn that off in edit mode again, so if I want to sort of just adjust where these things are going to lay, I'll hit R and then Z, and I can just allow that to spiral across. As you can see, as it spirals, each piece sort of moves slightly up and down. So if you just focus on one of these edge points here, you can see as I rotate in the Z axis it moves up and down. So for now, especially this just being the first one, I'm not going to worry too much about the positioning. So I'm just going to remove the tops and the bottom vertices. So we've just got the vertices that are interacting with the object. Now we can apply the Shrinkwrap Modifier, and we're going to extrude, and we just extrude in the Z axis, so we can just grab this handle and move it up or down. And I'll just move it down so we've got a bit of thickness to it. And then we want to add in a solidify modifier, and we can just adjust the thickness on this. So now we've got, a single piece of leather wrapped around the object. Now if we want to add in a bunch more of those, we can. So we'll do it a few more times. So I'll add in a curves galore, and this time I'm going to bring down the end angle. So I've only got a few wraps going along, maybe to about there. And you can turn the resolution down when you bring that sort of stuff down, because there's less of the curve, so it needs less resolution. So then Alt C again, mesh, and then we want to shrink wrap to the cube, and then S, Shift Z, bring those in, get rid of the tops and bottoms, and apply that, select that, and then I'll bring this one up a bit. And add in a solidify. Now as you sort of get more and more curves, you'll want to keep each one sort of slightly less thick than different ones, or slightly more thick, just so that it looks like they're sort of one's going over the top of the other, rather than, because if you have them sort of at exactly the same sort of thing, you'll get this where it's sort of half intersecting at points and it just sort of looks bad. So if I keep this one just slightly under what's going on there, you can get that looking okay. So the reason I do several different curves in different frequencies in the actual spiral, it just makes it look more like someone's gotten the leather themselves and just wrapped it around by hand. This would sort of be especially helpful if you were doing a bandaged arm or a bandaged leg. You'd of course want it to look like someone's bandaged it by hand, because there's no such thing as a machine bandage. So I'll do a couple more curves. So curves galore. If you bring the start angle above the end angle, you actually reverse the sort of direction of the curve. So where it was sloping up to the left or sloping down to the right, it's now sloping up to the right. So that's sort of good to sort of show going up and down as they're wrapping. And I will just adjust these a bit so I've got a fairly frequent thing going on. And then Alt C, shrink wrap to the cube, S, Shift Z, bring that all the way in, and then we can get rid of the top and the bottom. And extrude, add some thickness, apply the shrink wrap and solidify. You can keep the shrink wrap, which might be useful if you've got an animated character, but you'd have to be sort of careful with that because it does make it slow down quite a lot. So you can see it sort of now looks like a bit of a tangled mess, I think. Did it be a bit there? There we go. So yeah, that looks a bit better. Sometimes you have to go in the negative direction. Sometimes you have to go in the positive. Just depends on the way the normals are facing. It's not too much of a worry at this point. So we'll just sort of massage that in. So I've got a variety of different wraps going on, and it's starting to look good. Just to finish off each one, you're going to want to apply the solidify modifier, do a say Control 2 for a subsurf modifier, tab into edit mode, and then Control R for loop cut, and just reinforce that edge and reinforce that edge, and then Control R here and reinforce that edge. And because it's a spiral, just doing that has reinforced everything all the way down for just this one spiral, and it's even done it on both top and bottom here. You don't really need to worry about the inside edge because that's hidden from view, so you don't need to worry about adding any extra geometry there. We can go smooth shading, and we can do that again a couple more times just so you can see. So apply the solidify, Control 2, and then just reinforce those edges quickly. So you can quickly pump out some very detailed looking sort of wrappings, and it's not sort of too labor intensive that you have to really focus and adjust all these little things. You can, you know, trim off the edges and stuff. And if you've got like a sword hilt or something, you can cover up these ends here, or you can just erase them yourself, just like you probably want a knife cut across there and fill in the top. So we'll just Control 2 and then Control R. So we've got some wrappings. I mean, it depends on what you're doing. If you're doing an arm that's got some loose leather wraps sort of around it, then this might be all you really need. So you've got a bit of skin poking through. I'll show you one that I did a bit earlier. So here's one that I was just doing a bit of a test on. And I've got a variety of wraps going through, and it's completely covered by all of them. There's no actual internal object there at the moment. I think I hit it. So yeah, I've got this basic sword shape that I got going on, and I've got a leather wrappings for the handle, and you can see it all sort of disappears into there, and it disappears into there. So you don't have to worry about those, just those little ends coming off. So hopefully you've sort of got an idea of how to achieve that. It's a fairly simple process, just when you've got to repeat a few times to get a good looking thing. You can probably project the normals from that onto another object if you were doing some really low poly stuff, or if you just wanted to save some memory. Especially if it was sort of a sword hilt that's sort of not ever going to get a close up. But if you were going to have a close up, then you'd probably want all the geometry to be in place, and really you just need to assign a basic leather material that you can. I think I covered that in a previous tutorial. That you can do a quick Google search on doing a leather material in Blender. So yeah, that's the hard part. Subscribe if you want to. Like the video if you've found it useful. Tell your friends. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook and all that sort of stuff. So good luck, have fun, and I will see you next time.